Hey folks, welcome to another Triple T Thursday. For those just joining us, that's tools, tips, and talk. We'll discuss info for the knife maker. Today's episode will continue our intermediate bowie knife build series. In today's episode, we're going to work on what I think is probably the most challenging for most people is a good fit up on the guard. And then we're going to move on to fitting up the block for your handle. So those two items, I think, give people the most problems. So let's get right into it. Okay, picking up from last week, we've got the blade all nice and ground to 400. Just some things you want to definitely watch when you do a knife like this. When you do a false edge, the false edge should terminate exactly at the tip on both sides. You shouldn't, it should converge right at the tip of the blade. The other thing is, of course, make sure your plunge lines here on each side match perfectly. And these do. The shape of the plunge here and here should also match. And then I look for where this terminates on both sides to make sure that matches. I've only surface ground this with a 120, so we're just going to finish this off with hand sanding and hand sand the blade. Alright, for this we're going to be using the Sand Shark hand sanding machine. Let's get to it. What you're seeing here is the Sand Shark hand sanding sled. It's an automated sled that'll help you in your hand sanding and make it go much quicker and easier. You can get them at TyrellKnifeworks.com. Alright, so I've got the blade all sanded to, right now to 800. And the reason that's important is because we're going to be fitting our guard. And if we fit our guard and then do a bunch of sanding, we'll have a gap here. We are going to go much higher, probably to 3,000, but that's not really going to take any more off. It might take some scratches out, so that's not really going to make a difference. For our guard, we're going to be using some 416 stainless. Okay, so we got our guard material. Now let's talk about how to fit the guard. There's a couple of ways you can do this. And one way is when you grind the shoulders, you file the shoulders, you basically file the tang down a little bit so that there's a step all the way across, and then the ricasso is going to sit on top of your guard material. I don't personally like that method. It thins out your tang. Sometimes, if your knife is pretty thin, you're going to thin the tang out even more. I'm not a fan. The way we're going to do this is we're going to basically file out this slot in the guard kind of at a bevel. So it's going to be kind of like this. And then we're going to hammer this on. And then we're going to make an impression of the ricasso into the guard. And we're going to use a rotary tool and kind of dig that out so that it sits down into our guard material. And I think that is the best way to get these to fit. I am going to take this to the grinder, and I'm just going to ever so slightly taper the tang from here to here, just so we can get it on here, and then as we hammer it on, it'll get tighter. Now we're going to talk about slotting the guard. So I just measured this, and this is right here, thickness wise, is about 171 thousandths of an inch. And I'll put the metric equivalent down in the bottom. So that's how wide our slot's going to be. As far as where the guard's going to go, I'm typically going to put it about there, about a 1/4 inch above the spine. I'll decide what I want to do. Sometimes, depending on what the knife is, I'll make it flush with the top of the ricasso here, or I'll flare it a little bit. I'll see how I feel once I get it on there. But The way I like to do my guards is use 3/8 thick stock, 3/8 of an inch thick stock, and then instead of trying to bend the guard down, what I'll do is I'll put a hollow on this side, and then I'll just grind the front down, because I like my guards to drop. I'm not a person, it's a stylistic thing. I'm not a fan of the flat guards where it comes up. I want the tip of the guard to go down and with hollow underneath. So you'll see what I do. All right, since this is 171 thousandths, we're going to use an 1/8 inch drill bit and then file the rest. First, I'm using a little layout fluid so that I can mark on the guard just some measurements and widths. Now remember guys, I have a milling machine. I would normally do all this on a milling machine, but for the sake of this video, I'm showing you guys how to do it manually with drills and files. So now that I've got the holes drilled, you can start with just a round chainsaw file. That won't fit in here, so I'd have to use some needle file and it would just take forever. What I suggest you get is some kind of rotary tool. I would go a little better than a Dremel, but if all you have is a Dremel, get some fine burrs so you can do this kind of stuff. It'll make your life easier. I'm using a GRS ultra high speed rotary tool. This thing rotates at 320,000 RPMs. It kind of sounds like a dental tool. They are expensive. I think this one is $500 or $600, but they're worth it. I'm just going to open up the holes here so that I can get a file in here. Now that I got the holes connected, I'm going to move to a file. And a good tip, don't be afraid to grind down one side of your file to make it thinner to be able to go into the hole, so you don't have to struggle with this for too long. So once we have our knife so that it fits a little bit, the tang fits a little bit into the hole, what we're going to do is kind of dovetail the back of this. And the way we do that is you really need one side of your file ground down, and then I'm just going to lift this up. You want to make sure you keep one side that's always the top. So this is the top. So now I'm going to file this on an angle, which is going to open up the bottom of this and not touch the top here. And because I'm going to have that flare, this top area is going to mushroom when I hammer it on, and that's fine. And then we're going to just ground that clean. Okay, I think I'm done with my guard. We can see that it's quite a bit bigger on this side, so it's been dovetailed out. The knife fits in halfway, and it's pretty tight all around. So now what we're going to do is take some leather, okay, being very careful. We're going to put the knife in a vise. Be careful you're not hitting the vise in any way. And you want this nice and solid. Okay, we're going to put our guard on, making sure we have it in the right orientation. And what I've made is just this little mild steel contraption here instead of a pipe. This is, I think it's 1/4 inch steel. And I have this little sacrificial guard so I don't harm my actual guard. And then I'm just going to hammer it on. Now I haven't quite got it on all the way, but you can see that there's a gap there. But really what you need to be careful of is that the guard is not askew a little bit, and that's what's happening here. The guard is kind of flexed this way, so we're going to just hammer it on one side more than the other to flatten that out. And that should remove that gap because it's pretty tight on this side. We're also not flat on the guard yet either. Now I think the problem I'm having right now is that my hole isn't quite wide enough. So I'm going to take this guard off and file the ends. To get the guard off, simply put it in here. You want a little piece of leather to go over this, just not to damage the top of the guard. Alright, here we go. Okay, and you want it loose here, and now we're just going to give it a few whacks from the top. And it should just pop off. You can see how it's mushroom here just a little bit, so we're going to file that down a bit. So there it is. It's not the best fit up I've ever done. There's a tiny little gap. So I'm going to just give you guys some tips on how to fix this. You can try hammering in the sides. That will work to some extent. What we're going to do is actually take the blade off, and we're going to use a punch just near the edge, softly enough to mushroom that in, but we can still grind it flat, and it should be tight there. So hopefully that'll tighten it up even more. So you can see I got a much better fit up now. The only issue is there's a tiny gap under each side of the ricasso. And to do that, this is where the high-speed rotary tool comes in handy. Because what I've done when I put this guard on is I hammered it on really hard. I should have imprints of the ricasso on the guard. Now I'm going to take my high-speed rotary tool and kind of dig those out and just keep repeating, hammering this on until it's inset. So there's the final fit up of our guard. So pretty happy with that. It's not perfect, but for hand filing it, it's not bad. Now we're going to move on to just fitting the handle and the spacers that I'm going to use. So turning our attention to the handle material, I'm going to be using this piece of what I can only imagine is maple that I just got at Blade Show. For handles, I like to use a template, so this is my typical bowie handle, so I've made a little metal template for it. It will go like that. Okay, so now I'll put this kind of on here. It's a little bit bigger, but I'll modify it here. And this will tell me I need to cut this. I need to put an angle on the front of this block to match the front of this. So that's the very first thing I'm going to do. So right about there. And that also lets me square up the front of this block at the same time. So I've squared up the block, and I went ahead and glued the pieces of G10, the white, black, and white, on here already. Sometimes I keep these separate, but since, like if these were metal pieces, I would probably keep them separate because they're too hard to drill through. But since G10 drills basically the same as the wood, I just put it right on there. Now we're going to just put our pattern, and I'm just going to trace the pattern here of the handle. Now we've got our tang drawn on, we're going to drill the slot for the tang to go into. Some key things here: make sure you have a vise to hold this. This is pretty much essential because that's going to keep this piece square to the table. And then I'm just going to line up the drill with my tang here, the line I put for my tang, and if it's not quite right, I'll just change the angle just a little bit. Okay, that looks perfect. What I like to do is drill a hole on one side, drill a hole on the other side, and then one in the center, or two in the center, depending on how wide it is, and then just keep going until I connect them all. Okay, I've temporarily removed the guard. Now this fits perfectly. Of course, there's the width of the guard there. I've also drawn back the tang past the point where I'm going to want to pin, and the pin is probably going to be about there. So, probably about there. And we'll talk about how we're going to pin that later. Now what I'm going to do is bed the tang, and sometimes actually, I may not even need to on this one. It's very, very solid. Okay, just revisiting this, not so tight now. I had noticed that this was off a little bit, kind of leaning like this, so I had to dig it out a little more. And reminds me why I don't do this, attach these first. Because if that was a little askew there, what I would end up doing is grinding the top down, and then you could just re-square up the block. It's a lot easier, but yeah, is what it is. It's perfectly square now. I'm just going to have to seat the tang, so at least you guys get to see that. Okay, we've bedded the tang. Now it's nice and square to the top of the handle, so we're all good. And incidentally, if you're curious about the petroleum jelly, you just pour a bunch of acetone in here, shake it around, pour it out, do it again. By then, you'll stick the knife in, and none of the petroleum jelly will come out, so it'll be gone. So now, a really important step, which is we need to square the handle, okay, the block for the handle to the knife. Yeah, I know we got it pretty square, but not exactly square. So to do this, and this works really well if there's flat spots on your knife, I happen to have those, but put the handle in, then we're going to find the lowest part and just draw lines, and then flip it over. Well, what we had was locked, and that should give us a perfectly square handle squared up to the knife. And there we can see the lines on the handle. Okay, so we did pretty good. They're within, you know, maybe 20 thousandths, so not too bad. But now we're going to grind those flat, and we're going to do all of this, get this perfectly square, and then we'll talk about our pin. But that's all for today, folks. Next time we'll do the pin, we're going to shape our handle, and we will finish the blade, and then glue it all up. Thanks, folks. We'll see you on the next one.